Welcome to If Numbers Could Talk. My name is Keelan. If Numbers Could Talk is a part of the Thinkering group. You can find us over at thinkering.space. You can also find at Thinkering Space the Thinkering Talks podcast, the Exofathom podcast, along with the Plank Talks with Joe. When you get a chance, please check out our merchandise. We have merchandise on our website, thinkering.space, as well as merchandise at teespring.com/thinkering shop. Please visit, grab a t-shirt, grab a mug. We'll appreciate it. And when you do, feel free to let us know that you've decided to become a member of any of our fan clubs. We definitely appreciate you, all the viewers, all the listeners out there here at If Numbers Could Talk. We come as often as we can on Tuesdays, 6 p.m. to give you all the statistics, all of the numbers. We try to get to different topics, but sometimes there's just topics or people, characters who kind of demand your attention, right? They're kind of just getting things done at a level or at a time in which you're interested, a time in which you really want to, let's say, participate in the people space. For me, one of those guys comes up again in today's episode. However, he is still relevant as he was in our very first episode where I covered him over a year ago. One of the guys I'm covering today is JRUE Holiday. This is my first time covering JRUE Holiday. I really enjoy watching him as a player. And I am really glad to see not only that his family is healthy and great and safe, apparently, which is a great thing to know. I only know that because he is back in the NBA. If you don't know what I mean, just go and look up JRUE Holiday and when he took a few years off from the NBA and how cool it was of the NBA and the New Orleans Pelicans to accommodate him and his family. That was awesome. But that is the guy I have compared to, and in fact, that is the guy that in real life is currently the only person who is physically in the way of Chris Paul. Chris Paul is that guy who we'll be covering again today to some extent. Now, again, the last time I covered him was a year or so ago. And I don't even think we were aware that he was going to be on the Phoenix Suns yet last year when I covered him. So let's just get that out of the way. Chris Paul is now a player on the Phoenix Suns. JRUE Holiday is now a player. I want to say this is also his first year on the Milwaukee Bucks. And they are facing off against each other in the NBA Finals of 2021. The first NBA playoffs after the 2020 bubble. And this will be the first champion on the backside of the pandemic. I kind of like how they're laying that out. You look back at sports, and it's, of course, if you think about it, I'm a numbers guy. Everything has a place. There is a way to keep track of everything going on, sometimes by the events that are going on around it. With sports, you get lucky. You get things like trades and CBAs, sometimes, unfortunately, a major injury. But in this situation, the pandemic is kind of the reminder for everyone. You know, this is the first whatever have you after the pandemic or since the pandemic, and it just works out for us. Now, Chris Paul, as we covered before, was drafted in 2005 as the fourth pick of the first round. He is currently in his 16th year of his career. JRUE Holiday was drafted in 2009. He was the 12th pick of the first round, and he is currently in his 12th year. JRUE Holiday was drafted to the Philadelphia 76ers. Chris Paul was drafted to the New Orleans Hornets. That first episode with Chris Paul is the very first episode of the If Numbers Could Talk series. The very first episode where I compared Chris Paul to a guy that we heard him say back when he was a younger guy he looked up to, which was Steve Nash. Episode 1 of If Numbers Could Talk. It's called Point Guides. What can I say? I wanted to add it as a ticker, but hey, help me out, guys. I'm still learning the ropes on how to not only do things live, but just how to get my production quality up. I'm learning by watching YouTube and asking other people. So here I am asking you guys in the middle of an episode, if you know anything that could definitely help me get better at this, I would love to take those tips, only because with the work we put in, I am not one of those people to say I know everything. I don't think I'll ever know everything, and that is the benefit of life for me. Now, speaking of guys who I don't think they carry themselves like they know everything, but they carry themselves like what I do know, I know well. Those people are Chris Paul and JRUE Holiday. JRUE Holiday knows defense, and he knows it very well. He may not know everything about defense, but he knows it well. Chris Paul knows offense and defense, but his main thing that we know him for is offense. Now, he may not know everything about offense, but I guarantee what he knows very well. Neither of these players have won an NBA championship, and today they will play game 6 of the NBA Finals of 2021. Between today and this game and the next game, game 6 and 7, one of these players, Chris Paul or JRUE Holiday, will have an NBA championship by the end of this current series they are in. JRUE Holiday has won 3 all-time defensive team nominations with 1 All-Star nomination. Chris Paul has had 4 assist championships, 11 All-Star nominations, 10 All-NBA nominations, 6 steal championships. He was the 2005-2006 rookie. He was nominated to the 2005-2006 All-Rookie team. He has been nominated to the All-Defensive teams 9 times, as well as being the 2012 and 2013 All-Star MVP for Chris Paul. In Chris Paul's regular season career, he has averaged 18 points, 4.5 rebounds, 9.4 assists, 2.1 steals with 0.1 blocks at 47% from the field, 37% from the three-point line, and 87% from the free throw line. Those numbers have changed a bit since the last time I covered him. Chris Paul also has averaged 2.4 turnovers with 2.4 personal fouls in each of his games. JRUE Holiday in the regular season of his career has averaged 16 points, 4 rebounds, 6.4 assists, 1.5 steals, 0.5 blocks with 46% from the field, 36% from the three-point line, and 78% from the free throw line, while also attaining 2.7 turnovers and 2.3 personal fouls in every single game for JRUE Holiday. Now, I got through that pretty quick. I bet you're wondering why. I'm also not going to do their totals this evening because I know for a fact there will be a time where I'm going to have to cover JRUE Holiday again. And when I get to his totals, you'll understand. Also, I don't think this is one of those situations where comparing the totals of the players will really paint the picture that we're watching. For instance, there's a picture, if you're watching Game 5 this evening when it airs, you'll understand what I'm covering and why I'm covering the way I'm covering it. These guys are at war with each other right now, and that war is entertaining in a good way because basketball, it's supposed to have a little warrior spirit to it and a little bit of entertainment value. Now, let's get on to the playoffs because that's where they currently are. What have they done in the playoffs before? What have they currently done against each other? And what have they done in the playoffs against each other this year, their first time facing off against one another? Let's go through it. In the playoffs altogether, Chris Paul has played 13 seasons. JRUE Holiday has only played 5 playoff seasons. Chris Paul has averaged in his playoff career 20.6 points, 5.5 rebounds, 8.3 assists, 2 steals, 0.2 blocks, with 48% from the field, 37% from the three-point line, and 85% from the free throw line, grabbing as well as 2.6 turnovers and 2.9 personal fouls in every playoff game for Chris Paul. JRUE Holiday in his 5 NBA playoff seasons has averaged 17.2 points, 4.9 rebounds, 6.8 assists with 1.5 steals, 0.5 blocks, adding 44% from the field, 34% from the three-point line, and 78% from the free throw line for JRUE Holiday. At the same time, having 2.3 personal fouls and 2 2.3 turnovers and 2 personal fouls in every game Jrue Holiday has played in the playoffs. Now, I've painted just a brief picture of who these gentlemen are when they are simply playing the game of basketball, what their numbers look like, their averages in the playoffs and in the regular season. Now, let's move into the game versus one another. Now, let's keep in mind, today's game, game 5, it's a very interesting statistic that I discovered. You have an official. That official's name is Jeff Foster. I wanted to make sure. I wanted to call him Foster Jeff. That's crazy. But Jeff Foster. It seems that when Jeff Foster officiates a playoff game and Chris Paul is in that game, 12 of 15 times, I think it is, or 13 of 15 times, Chris Paul's team has lost that game. It's crazy. You go and look at post-game interviews. Chris brings it up. James has brought it up. James Harden, when he played for the Rockets, how James feels the same thing happens to him, or at least was happening to him at that point. It's interesting. I'm not saying I agree or I even really understand. Well, I definitely understand the referee can control the game to a certain point. If you don't understand that, then I don't understand what you're watching. But what I don't understand is if the NBA Player Association president and other players, high-level players, are kind of ringing the same tone, wouldn't it make you look at it? I don't know. I just thought it was a very interesting statistic to find out that there's an official who has refereed a certain amount of Chris Paul games, and Chris Paul has lost 11 or 12 of those games in a row. One of those games just happened to also be the first game that the Milwaukee Bucks won. I believe it was the first game. Yeah, the first game that the Milwaukee Bucks won headed into this series when they were down 2-0. It was the very first game that they won, game 3. They're going into game 6. I apologize. Not if you watch game 5 tonight, but if you watch game 6 tonight, you will see these two gentlemen, Chris Paul and Jrue Holiday, going to war. Don't believe me? Let me break it down for you. Chris Paul and Jrue Holiday have played a total of 29 games versus each other in their NBA career. While Chris Paul has the majority of the wins, 19 to Jrue Holiday's 10 victories, Jrue Holiday is winning the playoff battle currently with 3 wins to Chris Paul's 2 wins in the playoffs. Now, again, we're going to game 6. They are playing that this evening. That game 6 will determine if or if not. And if not that game 6, game 7 will determine if or if not one of these gentlemen will end up with a ring. But the end of this series will definitely determine who comes out on top as far as this playoff battle between Jrue Holiday and Chris Paul. Now, Chris Paul has 17 wins in the regular season versus Jrue Holiday. His averages, are 18.9 points, 4.8 rebounds, 9 assists, 1.9 blocks, and 1.9 steals and 0.1 blocks. Where Jrue Holiday has won 7 games and averaged 15.5 points, 4.7 rebounds, 6.9 assists, 1.4 steals, and 0.6 blocks. Now, that is their general average versus one another. However, I don't think we came here for that. We came here to find out really quick because we want to get ready for this game, right? We want to tune in. We want to know what's going on. This is just a brief overview for those who want to know which matchups, which battles to watch. So I gave you a little background in who these guys are, what they've done against each other. But let's talk about these 5 games that Jrue Holiday and Chris Paul have competed against one another over this final series right here. Well, in this final series of 2021, 5 games so far, Jrue Holiday's team is up 3 games to Chris Paul's team's 2 wins. This, I believe, will be a 7-game series. They are currently, again, going to game 6 this evening, today. Jrue Holiday has averaged thus far in the 5 games 17.6 points, 6.6 assists, 6.6 rebounds, 9 assists, 1.8 steals, and 0.8 blocks. He shot 42% from the field, 32% from the 3-point line, and 90% from the free throw line, only missing 1 free throw. He's only had two turnovers in every game and 2 fouls in every game for Jrue Holiday in these playoffs against Chris Paul. Now, I'm not saying against the Suns. I'm simply saying against Chris Paul. Chris Paul in this playoff against Jrue Holiday has averaged 21 points with 2.8 rebounds, 8.8 assists, 2.2 steals, and 0.2 blocks. Shooting 54% from the field, 47% from the three-point line, and 86% from the free throw line for Chris Paul. He's also had 3.6 turnovers and 2.8 personal fouls in all of the 5 games leading into tonight's game 6 for Chris Paul versus Jrue Holiday. Now, I thought it to be very interesting that in the last 2 games, neither Chris Paul nor Jrue Holiday has shot not one free throw for Chris Paul nor Jrue Holiday in the last 2 games. I thought there was some type of an error when I was doing my research, and I went to every single site I could think of, looked up every box score, which I was already doing, but I went back thinking I had overlooked some things, looked for news sites. I really thought I had missed something, but true indeed, neither Chris Paul nor Jrue Holiday has shot a free throw in games 4 nor game 5. But what were their highs against each other in this playoff alone? What were the highs? Well, Chris Paul had a 32-point game in game 1. Jrue Holiday had a 27-point game, and that was the last game, I believe it was, game 5. Chris Paul has grabbed 11 rebounds in 1 game, while Jrue Holiday's max rebounds is 7. Jrue Holiday has had a total of 13 assists in one of the 5 games versus Chris Paul, where Chris Paul's maximum level number of assists was 11 versus Jrue Holiday. In 2 different games, Jrue Holiday had 3 steals. The most steals Chris Paul has had in a single game in this 5-game series so far, leading into 6 and 7. Chris Paul has only had 1 steal. That is the highest steal he has had, the entire highest amount of steals per game. Whereas with blocks, Chris Paul has had 1 block is the highest amount of blocks, whereas there was one game where Jrue Holiday had 2 blocks. So what I'm looking at here, guys, is these are 2 guys. We know these are 2 guys who play hard, my man. I know, but these are 2 guys who are orchestrating. I mean, look at this. We're talking about guys who are averaging right now versus each other 8 and 9 assists in a game, right? Now, there's a theory that I heard by a former player that you can't average that many assists and lead your team to a victory. Well, both guys are averaging high number of assists and scoring at a decent clip as well. So what I'm curious to know is, does this change that rhetoric? Does this break that mold? I don't think it does. I think there are anomalies in every era. There are anomalies in every faction, so to speak. It just so happens that in this situation, you will come out, whichever one of these guys win, they will be considered the distribution anomaly, according to the numbers through the past, through history, right? But that's what happens. That's the whole purpose of If Numbers Could Talk. That's the whole purpose of statistics and recording these things so that we'll be able to track what was the change, how did it change, when did it change. There was the rule that changed as far as jump shooting, and the hand in the cookie jar rule is what we called it. Then you had the swing throughs. So you have to find out those things and look at that to find out over the trend, to find the trend over time, to discover how, not only how did we get here, but where did we come from? Again, that is the most interesting thing to me. Jrue Holiday is a defensive oriented player. Chris Paul is an all-around player, but we get a lot of offense from him. Chris Paul's offense typically enriches the offense of other players, while Jrue Holiday is a very great offensive point guard as well. His main thing is, if you ask me, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer based on his defense alone. Chris Paul, based on his offense alone, would be a first ballot Hall of Famer. All around, he's Hall of Fame. We know that. So going into, again, this here game 6, I just wanted to cover Jrue Holiday and Chris Paul because it, to me, has been the most interesting matchup. Now, there are a lot of great matchups in this series. I'm not sure if you can really say that D-Book and Giannis are a matchup, because they're not really guarding each other. But if we were comparing output and the guys who are making the biggest splash, that would be the comparison there. Fourth quarter differences, Chris Paul, Chris Middleton. There's a lot of ways we could look at this series right now. The coaching differences, I've seen some coaching changes from both sides. And early on, I felt like we weren't going to see any coaching changes. And I was a little confused. Like, why would you not be guarding that differently? Or why would you not change the scheme here? However, I can say so far, going into game 6, I'm pleasantly entertained. And I can't wait to see what we get this evening. This has been If Numbers Could Talk. I really appreciate you guys for tuning in this evening. If you enjoyed this episode and the way that I did my best to give you information, not just about who these players were, but who these players are versus one another, going into tonight's matchup, tonight's battle, the war that is at hand, I, for one, hope that we get a game 7. And at that point, I'm not really worried about who wins. But tonight, I need Phoenix to win. I need Chris Paul and Devin Booker to pull it out, simply because I want to see a game 7. However, the way Jrue Holiday and Giannis and Chris has been playing, Chris Middleton, that is, you really can't call it. You got to tune into the game, which I'm about to do right now. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you for every single thing that you do, all of the comments, all of the emails, even people who just, maybe you're watching and you don't comment, or you tell me when you see me, or you see me in somewhere else, you let me know, like, hey, I saw one of your videos. I appreciate you guys. If you're interested in any of our other shows, you can head on over to the Thinkering Talks page on Facebook and on YouTube. We have the Exofathom podcast, which comes on Mondays and Fridays at 8 p.m. They cover everything from conspiracies to general life beliefs and just good old wholesome conversation about whatever they may think about. And I think it's probably one of the coolest shows out there on the internet right now. Check them out. It's hosted by Nick, Ayla, and Mike. Again, that's the Exofathom. They come on Mondays and Fridays at 8 p.m. on the Thinkering Talks page. They also have their own Facebook page and their own YouTube page. If you would like to check them out, go right on over and check them on. If you would like to check out what we do over at the Screen Time Continuum, where we dissect movies and TV shows, of course, we're not experts, but we are fans. And because of that, we give you everything we have when it comes to our critique and or simply our love for what we watched. If you want to check the Screen Time Continuum out, we shoot that on Wednesday evenings and Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. as well. That is hosted by myself, Nick, and Dejan. If you want more of Dejan has Strawberries and Coffee over on Twitch. He also posts his videos the day after he live streams on Twitch to YouTube. And right now, I know he played Conquer to begin, but he'll be playing a lot of different video games, giving you guys an introduction into games that maybe you've never heard of, maybe you've never played, or maybe you just never got the time to venture through. If you would like to watch that, hop on over to Strawberries and Coffee on Twitch and or YouTube. However, if you enjoy just hearing me talk about statistics and everything that goes on within the numbers world, whether it's basketball, movies, comic books, or any other sport or interest that involves statistics, please stay tuned here with If Numbers Could Talk, Tuesday evenings, 6 p.m. I appreciate you guys. Have a great one, and I'll see you next time. And remember, this is live.